When Robert rescued a girl off the streets, he had no idea he was raising his future betrayer. Years later, his fortune vanished, and she revealed her true intent: to destroy his life from the inside. The events that follow will shock even the most experienced. But let's start from the beginning. A cold evening blanketed New York City, covering the streets with a thin layer of frost. Robert White, a successful owner of a chain of prestigious restaurants and hotels, was heading home after a long and stressful workday. His life seemed complete: luxurious downtown apartments, a sports car, and all the material comforts anyone could wish for. Yet, despite it all, a sense of emptiness and loneliness never left him. At 40, he realized that not all business successes could fill the void lurking in his heart. As he turned onto a narrow street, usually quiet and empty, a small figure on a bench caught his attention. She sat, curled up and shivering from the cold. Robert slowed down, feeling a sudden wave of concern, and got out of his car. The girl's clothes were thin and dirty, her hair was disheveled, and her small hands were clutching her knees in an attempt to keep warm. "Hey, are you okay?" Robert knelt in front of the girl, trying to make his voice soft and friendly. The girl lifted her head, her eyes filled with fear and exhaustion, meeting his. She looked at him with distrust, but didn't respond. Robert noticed how her lips quivered and felt his heart tighten. He realized that this was a child in trouble. "My name is Robert. I just want to help," he continued, extending his hand. "What's your name?" "Lily," she whispered, barely audible. "Lily, are you here alone?" He tried to speak as gently as possible, so as not to frighten her. She nodded, lowering her head. Robert noticed her face looked worn out, and her eyes seemed too mature for her age. "I ran away," she finally admitted, her voice filled with despair. "From the shelter. They treat us badly there. I don't want to go back." Lily's words struck Robert. He knew there were many shelters in New York, some of which had a bad reputation, but hearing it from a child's mouth was especially painful. He paused for a moment, understanding the seriousness of the situation. "I'm not going to leave you here," he said firmly. "Let's go. I'll take you to a hotel. There, you can warm up and have something to eat." Lily looked at him, still suspicious, but a glimmer of hope appeared in her eyes. Robert knew that gaining her trust wouldn't be easy, so he added, "I promise nothing bad will happen. I just want to help." Lily hesitated for a few seconds, but then timidly extended her hand. Robert felt her icy fingers close around his. This touch awakened something deep within him, and he realized he could no longer leave this girl behind. He placed her in his car, wrapping her in his warm jacket to keep her warm, and drove to one of his hotels. On the way, Lily remained silent, cautiously observing the world through the windows. Robert refrained from asking too many questions, understanding she needed time to feel safe. When they arrived at the hotel, Robert arranged a room and a meal for her. Though she was clearly starving, Lily ate slowly, as if afraid she might be asked to leave at any moment. Robert watched her, and an inner desire grew within him to do more than just offer her one night of comfort. That night changed Robert's life. He couldn't stop thinking about Lily and her situation, even after he returned home. Questions about her past and future haunted him. In the weeks that followed, he did everything to help her. He hired lawyers to sort out her paperwork and enrolled her in a private school. She received everything needed for a normal life: warmth, food, and care. Robert felt that by helping Lily, he had finally found meaning in his life. For the first time in a long while, his existence was filled with something real and important. 10 years had passed since the night Robert found Lily on that cold street. In that time, she had become an integral part of his life. Robert had officially adopted her, and together, they built the life he had always dreamed of having. He was proud of her achievements and watched with joy as she grew into a smart, talented, and confident young woman. Robert invested everything in Lily. He provided her with the best education at prestigious private schools and paid for her participation in numerous clubs and activities where she developed her talents. She studied art, foreign languages, and even took business courses. He wanted her to have every chance of success, and perhaps even run his business one day. They spent a lot of time together, traveling, visiting theaters and museums, and dining at the best restaurants. For Robert, these weren't just pastimes. He genuinely wanted to show Lily the world and teach her to appreciate life. He told her stories about his successes and failures in business, trying to pass on the knowledge he had accumulated over the years. Lily seemed grateful for all this. She listened to his stories with interest and attention, often asking about his past and dreams. However, despite all their shared efforts and closeness, Robert sometimes noticed something strange in her behavior. Occasionally, when she thought he wasn't looking, a cold, almost detached expression would appear in her eyes. He couldn't explain what it meant, but he chalked it up to her difficult childhood. Robert understood she had endured a lot of pain and betrayal, and hoped that with time, his care and support would help her let go of the past. One evening, during dinner, as they were discussing her school achievements, Robert noticed how her expression suddenly changed. Her eyes, which had always seemed so lively and attentive, became cold and even slightly cynical for a moment. He paused mid-sentence and asked, "Lily, are you okay?" She quickly changed her expression, giving him a warm smile. "Of course, Robert, I was just thinking," she replied, and her voice sounded so sincere that he decided not to give it further thought. Robert couldn't shake the feeling that sometimes he didn't fully understand Lily, but instead of trying to figure it out, he continued to surround her with love and care, hoping that his efforts would eventually bear fruit. He believed that by being her support, he could make up for all the hardships she had experienced in her childhood. Over time, Lily became more and more his pride and hope for the future. He imagined her one day taking over his company and leading the business to new heights. Robert believed that the upbringing and love he had invested in her would help Lily become a strong and honest woman. However, despite his hopes, Robert knew that the past couldn't be erased completely. He understood that her difficult childhood had left deep scars, and sometimes he doubted whether he could ever fully rid himself of the anxiety that arose when he saw those brief but unsettling flashes in her eyes. Nevertheless, every day, Robert found joy in their shared life, feeling that despite all the challenges, he had finally found a true family and meaning in his existence. When Lily turned 18, her life and Robert's began to change. Lily had grown into a confident, beautiful, and charismatic young woman. She attracted the attention of those around her with her intelligence and determination, and Robert felt proud of the person she had become. He believed that all his efforts in raising her had paid off, and soon she would be able to take over his company, bringing in her fresh ideas and ambitions. However, over time, Robert started to notice changes in Lily's behavior. She began spending less and less time at home, and her frequent absences worried him. At first, he didn't pay much attention, chalking it up to her growing independence and desire for autonomy. But the more time she spent away, the more distant she seemed. Whenever Robert tried to ask about her activities and whereabouts, Lily would always deflect with, "Just with friends," or "working on a project." A few weeks later, Robert noticed even more troubling signs. Lily started disappearing for days at a time, leaving no messages or explanations. When she did return, her behavior was colder and more detached than ever. She avoided long conversations and answered his questions briefly, with little interest. One evening, after returning home from an important meeting, Robert discovered that some of his documents and contracts, which he kept in his home office, were missing. It was odd, as only he and Lily had access to the safe where these papers were stored. His heart sank, but he tried to dismiss his worries, convincing himself that he might have misplaced them or left them at work. The next day, Robert received a notification from his company's legal department. The letter stated that several deals he supposedly approved had led the company to significant financial losses, leaving the business on the brink of bankruptcy. Robert was in shock. He couldn't believe such a thing had happened. Without delay, he contacted his lawyers and initiated a thorough review of the documents. When the lawyers presented their findings, the truth was staggering. All the deals were indeed signed with his name, but Robert knew he had never authorized them. A deeper investigation revealed that Lily had forged his signature, using her access to his personal documents and company resources. She had orchestrated a series of risky and unprofitable deals, thereby undermining the financial stability of the business. Robert couldn't believe what was happening. He felt his world crumbling. The person he considered his daughter had betrayed him in the most cunning way. He decided to confront Lily immediately, hoping it was some sort of misunderstanding. When she returned home, Robert invited her into his office. Her face remained calm and unreadable as he asked her directly, "Lily, what's going on? Why did you forge my signatures and make those deals? Don't you realize you're destroying everything we've worked for?" Lily looked him in the eye for a moment, and there was not a trace of regret in her gaze. Coldly and calmly, she replied, "I knew you'd find out eventually. You've always been so trusting, Robert. I used that to my advantage." He froze, unable to believe what he was hearing. "You used me?" His voice was filled with pain and confusion. Lily merely shrugged. "From the start, I knew you were my ticket out of poverty. I accepted your help because it benefited me. But now, I don't need anything more from you. I have your money, your business, and your resources. I'm leaving to start a new life." Robert could not believe what he was hearing. He felt everything inside him tighten. The years he had spent trying to create a better future for her had all led to this betrayal. "But why, Lily? Why like this?" he asked, searching for any explanation. "Because I never forgot who I was or where I came from, and I never believed anyone could help me without some benefit for themselves," she replied. "Now, I have everything I need, and I don't need you anymore." With that, she stood up and left, leaving Robert sitting in his devastated office. Her words and actions shattered his world, and he realized that his life, filled with care for her, had been nothing but an illusion. After Lily's betrayal, Robert's life changed dramatically. His company was on the brink of bankruptcy, and soon he had to face the harsh reality. He had lost everything he had built over the years. The home he had lovingly created, where he and Lily had shared joyful moments, became a reminder of his mistakes. He was forced to sell not only the house, but all his assets to pay off debts and salvage what little was left of his former life. Instead of the usual luxury and confidence in the future, he was left with emptiness and despair. Everything that once seemed important and valuable lost its meaning. Robert sank into a deep depression, feeling as though his life had collapsed. He isolated himself from society, avoiding friends and former colleagues who offered help. He felt shame and disappointment for allowing himself to be so blind and trusting. But at rock bottom, Robert began to reevaluate his life. He realized that the true meaning of life wasn't in wealth or success, but in how one treats others and the relationships one builds. Understanding this, he decided to start fresh, no longer with the ambition of becoming a successful businessman, but simply as a person who finds joy in everyday moments. Robert found a job at a small cafe in the city center. The place was modest but cozy, and the owners welcomed him warmly, appreciating his hard work and honesty. Here, he found satisfaction in simple things. He made coffee, served customers, and engaged with them. Each day spent at the cafe became a new experience, helping him regain his faith in people and himself. Gradually, his life started to stabilize. Robert began to notice simple joys that once seemed insignificant. The morning light, the smell of freshly baked pastries, the smiles of regular customers who came to the cafe and shared their stories. He realized that true happiness didn't lie in accumulated wealth, but in the ability to appreciate the present and find joy in small moments. However, the pain of betrayal still lingered. He often thought of Lily and their years together, unable to understand where he had gone wrong. But despite this pain, he learned to let go of the past and look forward. He understood that his lesson was to not fear starting anew and finding strength within himself. One evening, as he was leaving the cafe after closing, he saw a young girl standing on the corner, clearly cold and frightened, clutching a thin blanket. Robert slowed his steps, watching her, and a sense of compassion stirred in his heart once again. He approached her, remembering the very night he had met Lily. "Hey, are you okay?" he asked gently. The girl looked up, her eyes filled with fear and confusion. Robert recognized that look and felt a spark of hope ignite inside him. He offered her help, but this time, despite his desire to assist, he was prepared for the unpredictable nature of fate. He knew that no matter how this story unfolded, he remained committed to his new principles, to help those in need without expecting anything in return. Robert's story ends with him, despite past mistakes and pain, remaining a person willing to support others. He understands that life can be harsh, but he also believes that kindness and honesty remain the only true values worth carrying forward.